Nick,
Yes.
I've only got rules in this brain for like 3 to 4 rules, but I want to have a game that's got deep strategy. Can you help me out?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike. I'm 4 Rule Mike. That's my name.
That's what we
now.
call 4 Rule Mike.
That's all I can hold.
2 toes, 4 rules. That's all he's got, you know? I'm Nick, that's Mike. We're the brothers Murph. And yeah, today we're going to talk about games that have a pretty low rule amount, but a lot of strategy to them.
Especially considering the weight of game. So like the weight of game and what you get strategically versus the rules and balance are quite like this, which is always a nice thing.
Yeah, it's nice. And there are a decent amount of games that kind of fall into that category of like, again, they're not the simplest games ever made, of course, but again, if you're talking about the amount of rules that there are to the amount of strategy in the game, or the depth of strategy, it's actually a pretty big difference. Because a lot of times you're like, oh, these really strategic games, but they have like a 40-page rule book. So it's like, yeah, they're really deep, really strategic, but they have a lot of rules. And I always find
little rules,
games to be elegant when you're like, oh, there's only like 5 real true rules in this game, and then the rest is all just strategy. It's really, really cool.
It's always nice when you can get it. So we have 10 games from you of different weight levels and things like that, different styles that we all think give you a lot of stuff to kind of chew on without a ton of like remembering specific rules, busyness in the brain. So let's get to them right now with number 10.
Number 10 is number 10 because I hate this game. But I can't deny that there are not very many rules and a lot of strategy when you get into it. This is Hanabi.
This is indeed Hanabi.
You talk about this game.
I like this game a lot. Nick is not a fan of it. I kind of ruined it for him, but
One
that's
of my least favorite games of all time.
This is a game where you have a hand of cards, but the little trick is that the hand of cards is facing away from you.
Like this.
You're the only person who doesn't know what your hand of cards is.
Yeah.
Everyone else can see your stuff. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to play different colors, like suits of cards, in a sequence of 1 to 5, which represents us putting on a really styling fireworks show.
Yes.
And so what you can do is give bits of information to your teammates and stuff, talking about like a number. You have like 3 blue cards and stuff. You have,
this
2
is a 5.
ones.
Yeah.
This is this is a specifically a 5 or whatever, but you can only communicate in limited ways. You can't say this is a green 4 and stuff, but through kind of giving bits of information, people can then deduce like, okay, this must be a white one. We don't need that. We've already played that. I can burn this to kind of buy us time and stuff like that. And so it's really fun because the rules are kind of simple in that, like, hold your cards the other way. You can communicate specifically an amount of numbers, amount of colors. You can't say specific stuff. And then you're often playing, but it's all about creating a kind of sub-dialogue, almost like trick-taking games where by pointing out this card, I'm telling you really about these cards over here. Or basically by saying this isn't this, it means that maybe you should pay attention to some stuff over here and this isn't needed. And you can deduce a lot more
from what's not said.
From what's not kind of said versus what is said. And it creates this kind of fun language in itself, which is really cool. And because there's not a lot of rules to follow, you can get right into kind of figuring out how do we communicate with the limited communication we have.
Yeah. It's a really cool concept beginning. If you like that kind of hidden language and trick-taking games, as Mikey mentioned, check this out because it does have that a lot. It's a really, really cool concept. And as much as I don't really like the game, I can still appreciate it's got a lot of strategy for really very, very little rules. That's why it's our number 10. Number 9 is going to be one of a couple, but we didn't add too many of these abstract strategy games. This is going to be Santorini.
Absolutely.
Really, this list, the absolute king of this kind of concept of low rules, high strategies, abstract strategy games. Think chess.
Right.
You can learn chess in 3 minutes, and people dedicate their entire lives to playing that terrible game.
Exactly. The rule's very simple. You just have to learn how each piece moves, and then you're off to the races.
Yeah. So abstract strategy games fall into this category a lot. And one of our favorites is Santorini, because Santorini is dead simple. There's not even like, oh, this one moves in an L, the knight moves in. It's like, no. You have 2 workers. You're on a little grid board. You each have 2 workers. On your turn, you can move one of your workers to one of the 8 spaces around it, and then you can build in one of the 8 spaces around it. That's it. That's the entire game. What you're trying to do is you're building these 3D pieces, and you're trying to get one of your people up to the 3rd floor. Because when you move, you can move up a floor. And then when you build, you can build any floor. So you don't have to be like on the 2nd floor to build a 3rd floor next to it. On the ground, you can build the 4th floor, which is a dome. So it's all tactical. You're just trying to keep someone from getting to the 3rd floor, because they get one of their workers to the 3rd floor, they automatically win. So Mike's almost about to get there. I need to move here and build a dome on top of it. It's based in Santorini, have those beautiful blue domes. And on those domes, you can't stand on, so that's now blocked. and it's just tactical. And that's just the base game. But then you can also have where each person gets a Greek god, and that god will change things slightly. But it might be like you can move both your workers on your turn, or you get to build twice, or there's always some little wrinkle to it.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit more, even more strategic. But even just the base game is so much strategy, so much tactics, and all you literally do is go move, build. That's the entire game.
That's it. I mean, it really is one of the best examples of like, there's not a lot of stuff to track rules-wise. The hardest thing to remember is like you can only move up one level per turn, like in terms of you can't go from like level 1 to level 3. But it's also just kind of intuitive and makes sense.
Yeah, right. You don't have a ladder.
Yeah, I agree. It's got great table presence.
Beautiful
it's
game.
Chess-like while feeling very different.
And then you have the powers, which are really, really nice,
yeah,
but
so
also still very simple.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to add complication, you can do that, but they're not complicated.
No.
And there's gods that are kind of differing levels of complications. So you can work your way up. So Santorini, yeah, you can get in that game in no time flat. I think it's like a little 2-sheet of paper. That's your rules.
Yeah,
it's very simple.
Super, super easy. Santorini is a great abstract strategy game, absolutely beautiful, and absolutely falls in the category of low rules, high strategy.
So number 8 is Arboretum. This is a game that
again has like 2 rules or so. That's about
it blew our minds when we read it first because we're like, this game has no rules. We're like sitting on the floor at Gen Con, maybe our first Gen Con even. And we're like, that's it? That's all the rules are? This is going to be a cinch. And then it melted our brains and we were left as puddles on the floor of the convention center. So Arboretum is a game where you are laying out pathways of trees.
Yeah.
You're putting out different types of trees and creating, little paths that start and end with the same species of tree. If the numbers are ascending, you can score that potentially, I'll say. But all you're doing on your turn is drawing 2 cards, then playing a card and discarding a card. That's it.
That's all you do.
When you play cards out to your little tableau, they just have to go orthogonally adjacent to something else that's been played before. And it's where it gets crazy is that you're building out these paths. They, again, have to begin and end with the same species. You do not have to have the same species of trees in the middle of the path, but it's helpful if you do. You can get bonus points if you do. But to score a certain species of tree, you need to have the highest sum of the values of that species cards still in your hand at the end of the game, so they cannot be on the table or they don't serve you. Yeah. So you are trying to simultaneously pick up cards from all the other players' discard piles. If you pick up cards from discards, you can choose from anyone's, including your own. Yeah. So you're trying to kind of control access to cards, make sure you have cards left over, but you want to put enough cards down on the table, because if you build a pathway that's entirely that species, you get all these bonus points. Yeah. But how do you balance placing stuff out, holding stuff back, trying to mess with other players, and basically what species of trees am I going to invest in versus the ones I'm going to let go? Yeah. Because you take all this time to build a path and then lose out on the ability to score that card, because literally only one person gets to score every one species. Yeah. That's going to hurt. So
it's so tough.
Tactical as all get out.
Yeah, and it's hard. It really melts your brain. It's really just so much to think about, so many things to consider in terms of like I said, do I hold this back? And also, like, the cards are 1 to 8. So, like, let's say we have the orange trees. If I have the 1 and Mike has the 8 then goes away. Yeah. So, like, you're like, oh, I have the 8. This is great. But then you have also like, oh gosh, does someone else have the 1? Does someone else have the 1? But you see it's down there. Like, oh, there's the 1. Okay, so now I can hold on. It's just like there's so many things to think about. But on your turn, you draw 2 cards either from the deck or a discard pile. Play a card to your Arboretum, discard a card to your discard pile. That's all you do in the entire game. Simple. And then the rest is just destroys your entire brain.
I love it. It's like,
so good.
This was the first game that made us think about this kind of list. Like, this is the first one where we're like, I cannot believe how crazy crunchy this game is versus how simple the rules are.
Yes.
It really has continued, and still it continues to impress in that way, where I'm like, how did you do that? How did you make something that is so brutally difficult to work your way through strategically while being so simply, again, you can play this game 30 seconds after busting down on the table.
It's
pretty much.
Yeah.
You might not be able to play a game strategically very well, but
I never do that anyway.
How it mechanically moves.
You're good to go. Yeah, wild. Arboretum is number 8. It's very good. Number 7 is going to be our last abstract strategy game, because we didn't want to fill up this entire list with them, but we want to put another one on there.
Again, put a billion of them on there. Yeah. They all qualify.
Pretty much, yeah. This is going to be Mythic Mischief. Mythic Mischief is really, really fun. It's kind of like a chess-like game where every player is going to take a faction. It's mostly a 2-player game, although you can play it 3 and 4.
Yeah, play on teams.
And everyone takes a faction. You're all like high school kids in this like fantasy high school. So someone's like zombies and someone's like werewolves and
ghosts
and stuff like that. And you have 3 your little pawns, and the minis, and the production value is like so good. And basically, there's going to be some kind of tome keeper because you're in the library and you're not supposed to be in the library.
They're out there doing security patrolling around the tome
and this
keeper.
big tome keeper is just like just like walking through. And basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to maneuver your opponents to then get eaten by the tome keeper. They don't actually get eaten, but basically, the tome keeper moves onto a spot with a character.
They're thrown into detention, man.
They get thrown into detention. They get taken off the board, and then the other player gets a point. So in the game, you can move, you can distract the tome keeper and kind of make them move, but they're going to be going towards specific ports on the board. So you're like, okay, I know they're going to move here, because what you can also do is every single faction is different. They're going to have 2 things that are the same, but then everyone else is going to have something where they can move people or swap with them, or do a whole bunch of different stuff, basically manipulate the other player's pawns, the other player's minis, and then you're also usually going to have something where you can manipulate the bookshelf, because the board has a bunch of bookshelves on it, which kind of creates like corridors and stuff, and everyone's going to have something where you can like move around those bookshelves. So you're able to manipulate the board and the people on the board, and you're trying to get each other into the way of the tome keeper to get eaten by him. And it's so much fun, but it's pretty darn simple because you just kind of explain that, like, this is how you move, this is what you do, and then you kind of explain this is your faction, and these are the kind of special things they do. It's pretty darn simple to get into. It's definitely more complicated than like something like Santorini.
Sure.
But then there's so many tactics because all the factions really honestly feel different in terms of how they move around.
Absolutely, but it all comes down to, like, how does your player ability move other pieces around, and the bookshelves and stuff. And they all have different ways to do it, but they all do those things. Yeah. Which is really cool. And then their little ultimates and the after lunch specials and stuff are just, there's so much to explore here with all the different factions. Yeah. But the rules ultimately stay the same, stay pretty simple. You understand the tome keeper moves in a very kind of predictable path. You can kind of move bookshelves around to manipulate that path and stuff, but you kind of know how they're going to function. So there's a lot of kind of information available to you, which then leaves you, as always, what we're happy to see in these is it leaves you with extra brain power to dedicate to hopefully playing well, to being really strategic in your play. Yeah, really tough. Again, not too many rules and just like so much difference between the factions, even though they're only slightly different, but the way they move just really, really makes the game different. It's a new puzzle to solve every time. Yeah, every single time. And there's a whole bunch of different factions. And then the production value is also great, which doesn't matter for this list, but it's also awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. So Mythic Mischiefs are number 7. Really enjoy it. Let's get to number 6. Number 6, to me, kind of is similar to Mythic Mischief in that it's all about kind of learning new factions. Yeah. This is Unmatched. Yeah. So Unmatched, of course, you know we love it. We've talked about it a bunch over the years since it first kind of came out. This is a mostly a two-player dueling card game where you're just getting your hero and battling another hero with a bunch of different sets that have now come out, and all of them are cross-compatible with each other. So you can have like Black Panther from the Marvel universe. Fight a T-Rex. Yeah, from Jurassic Park's universe. So that's pretty awesome. What makes this game so kind of fun and accessible is that there's 3 types of things you can do on a turn. Yep. You're going to get 2 actions. You have to take 2 actions. You can do the same action twice or 2 different actions or whatever is up to you. You can maneuver, where you can basically take your player and any sidekicks they have and move their full move value. So if their move value is 3, all of your pieces can move up to 3, going from connected to connected space, which is very easy to see. You can, of course, attack somebody by playing one of your attack cards. They can play a card to defend themselves. You flip and reveal. There's all sorts of effects and things that come with doing those attacks that are all listed right on the cards. You don't have to remember anything there. And how they function. Or there are scheme cards. There's these special yellow lightning bolt cards in your hand, and you can play one of those cards as an action, and again, do what it says on the card. That's it. You teach the game in 5 minutes. You can teach a game and get playing very quickly, and everything comes down to like, what's the flavor of my character? What are they good at? Are they a ranged character and I kind of want to stay back and not get hit because I'm not so super strong? Are you a character that wants to kind of get, beaten up a little bit? Achilles goes all crazy psycho after Patroclus dies. So it's like maybe you want your psychic to eat it so you can get super strong. It's all about figuring out that puzzle, but everything comes down to like you can move around, you can attack, or you can play a scheme card or an event, Because like that's it. All the characters are different. They all have a unique deck, and it's like, oh, that sounds really complicated. It's like it's not, because you just
do what's on the card. And learning the strategy of the character might take some time. But again, that's the whole point. It's like there's not very many rules, but a lot of strategy. And to the point where it's like, now there is a growing tournament scene for Unmatched. There's like whole websites. I think it's called umleague.net. We'll put a link down in the description if we can find it. But it's basically like it tracks like different win rates for different characters. I mean, it's getting serious. There's becoming more and more tournaments. I think this is going to start becoming tournaments with like money and stuff. That's my guess. I think it'll eventually get to that point because people love it. And one of the reasons I love it is because it's simple to get into, but then there's so much strategy with all the different characters, and this kind of character is good against this kind of thing and all this stuff. But again, there's those 3 things. You can teach the game in 5 minutes, and then it's like, now play and learn your character. The games are also short. They're like 20 minutes or so. Yeah. So you can just kind of get into it. And it's a perfect, again, low rules kind of like, you can play this game a lot, especially because they keep coming out with characters. So there's like a never-ending supply of like new stuff to explore.
Oh my gosh.
Who knows when it's going to end.
Consistent support for this game, which is really cool. And it's fun. The production value is amazing. The art's incredible. So just on a pure collection level, it's a great game to play. But we find this has a lot of accessibility because there's so many themes and characters from stories and movies and things that you love that anyone can kind of get into it because I want to play as the Raptors from Jurassic Park. That sounds awesome. And they are awesome. And you give a nice game that's quick to get into. So I think it has a lot of ability to kind of bring people into the fold.
Yeah, totally.
And playing this kind of game. So that's Unmatched, our number 6.
Let's get number 5. Number 5 is one we talk about a lot in this kind of capacity. And this is the Castles of Burgundy. And this
don't add us now, because I know it's a bigger game, you might think, but don't add us now.
It's a bigger game, but really, realistically, it's like the rules are pretty darn simple. You have 2 die. You'll roll out those dice. Everyone will roll out their die. And then it's your turn. You can essentially do a couple different things with those dice. You can grab a tile from one of the depots, because the dice are 6-sided, and the depots are numbered accordingly. So you're like, oh, I rolled a 5. I'll grab this thing from this 5 and put it here. Or you can use that 5 to put it into your duchy, your estate, whatever it's called. And again, because your estate has pip values on it, so a 5 can go on a 5, and they have to like go to adjacent to other stuff. And then there's more stuff with like what the different tiles do, but even then they're pretty darn simple, especially like with a play area. They kind of tell you exactly what they do, especially all the buildings. Yeah. They tell you exactly what they do. Oh, this building, when I play it, allows me to grab one of these tiles. Okay. Or it allows me to do this thing. Okay. And then I guess the most complicated part is all the different monasteries, the kind of the knowledge tiles.
They listen in the rule book and they tell you how they work.
But like, that's most of the game. And again, people get deep into Castles of Burgundy. It's one of the most popular games ever. People love it. People talk about all these like, this map is really good for this. And I'm like, wow, I don't know that much about Castles of Burgundy at all.
There's tournaments on Board Game Arena constantly for Castles of Burgundy. It's such an incredibly rich game with so much to explore, and it just comes down to matching dice.
Yeah, really.
Oh, this good. It's a 4. Well, you need a 4 on the die to do that. Yeah. You want to take something from the 4th depot? Better have that 4. You want to put it in this spot? Oh, it needs a 4. Put a 4 down. Yeah. Only have a 3. Use a worker. Make it a 4. Like, it's not. It's really, for everything it gives you, it comes down to pretty simple stuff. Your buildings have to go into matching areas, but they're color coded, so they match the color. So it's all very well laid out and intuitive. It makes sense. There's not a ton of really like finicky rules here, which is really nice. So it just shows that's why the game has stuck around for so long, right? The quality of design, it's so smooth, it's so elegant, it's so just perfectly executed. It's an all-time classic, a modern classic.
And it has not that many rules.
And not that many rules, especially considering what you're getting. That's Castles of Burgundy. Don't add us.
I don't think it's much to add.
Don't add us, man. 5. That's what's going to 4.
Number 4, really, again, kind of like abstract strategy. This could be kind of an entire category. And this is going to be trick-taking games. We'll go ahead and choose The Crew because it's one of our favorite. Yeah. It's one of the more popular ones in the last couple of years. But really, trick-taking games really fall into this category where it's like, if you're playing hearts, it's trick-taking. You don't want hearts unless you're trying to shoot the moon. That's it. But there's people play those for generations, literally. Yeah. Because hearts and spade, because there's so much strategy. There's so much of that hidden language we kind of talked about earlier with Hanabi. And so trick-taking perfectly falls under the category of like low rules, but really high strategy, really high tactics. And they're great. So the crew is one of our favorite ones. It's a cooperative one where you're going to have different missions they have to do. Like, I have to win the blue 7. So then you're trick taking out. Everyone's going to have these kinds of missions, and you need to make sure that everyone completes their mission, which can be really tough. And it has that juicy trick taking. Well, since I played down this green 4, that tells you that I don't have this bronchitis, whatever. I don't know. You know, it's just like, it's just so much of that hidden information, and it's so good.
Yeah. So trick taking is one that like doesn't seem like necessarily a low rules thing because there is so much of the strategy part and the communication. But trick taking in general, and the crew definitely for this falls into typically simple categories of, if I play a certain suit, you must play a card of that suit.
Yeah,
if
usually,
you can. The highest number that gets played out of those 4 or 5, however many people are playing, is the person who wins that trick and starts the next one. The crew sticks very much to that model and method, and you are just then going for those missions. So it's kind of really benefited by the fact that it's pretty straightforward trick taking. With the exception of like there's some rocket cards or submarine cards if you're playing the new one, which you should be. And the trick comes into and leans heavily into that communication part. So it really goes extra hard into that strategy of like, how do I communicate my cards to people? How do I play stuff in such a way that I can make sure I can ensure that I don't win this trick because I know I'm the one that needs to not win tricks and things like that.
So you can play trick-taking games, the crews, forever. There's a reason why spades and heart are still a thing. Because they're just that great. And trick-taking is infinite playable, simple, crazy strategy. Yeah, trick-taking is great. We can fill the whole list with trick-taking. Number 3, our good friend Jimmy brought up, we were kind of talking about this topic, and he said, games with multi-use cards tend to be add a level of complexity to a game. And so we're going to choose Beer and Bread. Because Beer and Bread is a game, it's a 2-player game with multi-use cards, tri-use cards.
It's true.
Where you are kind of like friendly rival families who live across a river, and every year you have a bread baking competition and a beer brewing competition. Lots of B's, lots of alliterations. And you're basically trying to brew the best bread and bake the best beer. And you do that by playing out these cards. And each card, on your turn, you're going to kind of play one of these cards, and then you're going to put it down as a harvest card, which will get you supplies, like, you know, wheat, barley, things that you make bread and beer out of. Rye. Or you can play it down as an order card, not as an order card, but essentially a recipe card.
Yeah, you're making that.
You're like, hey, I'm going to make this specific bread. Or you can tuck it underneath your board, because on the bottom of the card is some kind of special power.
So we'll upgrade for your situation.
Yeah, and that's mostly all you're doing. You're basically either, and then you're trying to, again, do these things, bake these things, all this stuff, but there's not that many rules to the game. And then you alternate between plentiful seasons and like dry seasons. And the dry seasons are slightly different, but again, it's just a little bit of a difference, not much. And there's really not that many rules, but there's a lot going on in the game, especially with those multi-use cards. You just start the game like, gosh, how do I use this card? Do I use it for its ability? Do I use it for this? Like, and it's so much to think about.
Absolutely. And it's fun is in that first round, or the odd number rounds, I should say, the plentiful years, you are hand drafting.
Yes.
So you're playing a card and passing your cards back and forth. So you're like, don't want to hand over something. I really want to play this for the harvest ability. I need to play that first, but I really want this recipe. I hope it comes back to me. When you play your harvest cards and stuff, they come back to you for the second round, the even-numbered rounds. So I like to play stuff and kind of store cards in that way for recipes for the even-numbered rounds.
There's so much to think about.
But yeah, it comes down to like play a card for its harvest ability, play a card to make a recipe, or tuck a card to do an upgrade and clear out your brewery and bakery.
That's pretty much it.
And that's pretty much it. And the rest is kind of resource management, stuff like that. So it creates a lot of juicy decisions. It's very heads up. And that whole need to balance, because you only score, you'll get a beer score and a bread score at the end of the game, and only the lower one counts. So you really need to build as evenly as possible to ensure the highest possible score. Really fun stuff. Great little production.
It's so good.
Heads up play. It's just a fantastic one.
Yeah, it's super, super good. That's number 3. Let's get number 2.
So number 2 here is Concordia, the original trading
I feel like
Mediterranean
a lot of people
game.
would have thought about this one.
Yeah, this one is really great in terms of not bogging you down with rules, because it's a card-playing game ultimately. You're playing out cards to control the actions you do. And the reason this kind of falls into that low rules thing is that the cards write out on them what they do.
Yeah.
There's really no need to memorize rules hardly at all.
Yeah.
There's some rules about moving your pieces around the board and stuff, but it's going from point to point, connecting from city to city, or kind of sailing around. All that's easy enough to follow, but there's only a few types of actions really you can do. You can move your little dudes and ships around. You can build buildings. You can trade for resources to kind of build those buildings and stuff like that, and get more cards. What's really cool is that as you collect these cards, they are going to pertain to different gods and stuff, which are just basically going to score for different things you've done in the game, different types of things you've built, or different types of places that you are, stuff like that. And so every card kind of has those dual use, an in-game use, and then sort of like setting stuff away for the end of the game where you're going to score all of your points in the game. You kind of score up how you did based on those cards that you've collected. They kind of act as multipliers. If you have 5 of these things, you're scoring 5 times for all of those, the related category. So it's really, again, the thing I like is that the actions are fairly simple.
Yes.
If you're doing the kind of merchant action, you're going to get a couple bucks and spend a couple of dollars buying some goods and stuff, or selling goods. You can choose which one you do. Moving your people are simple, and it's like if you have 5 of your little military units, you get 5 points of movement, and how you dole those out is up to you and stuff, but it's pretty simple. You can activate a province to get some resources, or kind of fresh all of them to get some money, stuff like that. It's
get your cards back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This I feel like is one of the selling points of this game for people, is just the fact that like it's generally considered to be like a game. This game is always referred to as elegant, and a lot of times when people, elegant's one of those kind of amorphous terms in board games, but a lot of times when people say elegant, a lot of times what they mean by that is like simple rules or very smooth rules, but a lot of strategy. And I feel like Concordia is always talked about in that matter. It's like, oh, it's so elegant because the rules are easy, the rules are simple, there's not a ton of them, but there's all this strategy, there's all these expansions and all these different ways to play because of that elegance that the game has. And it really falls into this category of like not that much rules, the rules are smooth, simple, but man, there's a lot to explore in there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about getting out onto the board, getting to certain areas to get access to certain types of resources and stuff like that, and kind of really trying to maximize the cards that you're collecting in addition to your starting cards for that end game scoring, because that is the whole game, is that end game scoring. So how do I build out, for the cards that I have and I'm collecting, as how do I make this as synergistic and powerful as possible? But again, all the cards just say what they do. So if you ever have a wonder, oh, how's this work again? Just read it. It's right there. It'll take care of you for the most part. So there is a kind of a startling lack of rules compared to what you're getting for the game. It's very short rule book. It's maybe, we have Concordia Venus, I think it's maybe 4 pages or something, and that includes like how to play on teams and stuff. It's not, it's a very short rule book, and you get to go right into this classic, very Euro game. And again, to your point, kind of the definition of elegance for sure.
Pretty much. All right, our number 1 is a game we've talked about a decent amount, and one thing I love about it is because there is 2 things you can do on your turn, and it's considered a decent, like a mid-weight kind of Euro game. This is Le Havre.
Yeah, baby.
Because Le Havre, on your turn, you can do 2 things. You are going to move your boat forward, and it's not like a complicated movement. You just leapfrog to the next spot, and then you will seed some resource to these things, and then you can either take a pile of resources like wood, brick, fish, something like that, or you can activate a building card that's out there. Either that's in front of you or someone else, doesn't really matter. And you basically can move your disc and activate that. That's all you can do in the entire game.
That's it.
It's either get a pile of goods or activate a building card. And the building cards, there's a whole bunch of different building cards, but they're all pretty darn simple. A lot of times it's like, take your fish, turn them into smoked fish. A lot of times it's
resource conversion.
Yes, Uwe is kind of one of his first big forays into resource conversion, where you're going to turn this into this. And then there's certain things with like ship cards and like shipping stuff out is maybe a little bit confusing, but it's just like, in the end, it's like, it's also one of those games you can kind of teach as you go, because as the cards come out, you're like, okay, so this is what this card does. But in the end, it comes down to those exactly 2 things you can do. Get a pile of resources or activate a building. And the buildings, the vast majority of the time, don't need any explanation, because they just literally have a good, an arrow, another good. And it's basically like, turn this into this, and you might get coins, you might get something else like that. That's it. And it's just, that's the whole game. And it's just like, it's so, again, talking about Concordia, it's so elegant, it's so easy, it's so smooth, but those choices get tough where you're like, oh man, there's enough wood there. I do I wait because I want to get some more wood, but do I take it now? And there's all these juicy decisions like, oh man, I want to use this building, and then Mike on his turn uses it, and I'm like, I needed to use that on my turn. What do I do now? Because I have to feed my people because they're starving always because it's a Uwe Rosenberg game.
Very much a feed your people game.
And it's just so much fun, but it's just so simple.
Yeah, again, everything is kind of listed out there for you on how cards activate. There is also, kind of an appendix if you want a little more information on those. But they're easy to understand. Everything you do is useful and good and will give you something good. So if you take a pile of money because the Franks have been piling up, great. That's literally your points in the game. You can at any point just buy a building from the town for its coin value. Yep. That's easy to understand. You can sell it for half of its coin value if you want to do that. Again, nothing is overly complicated, and you can really just trying to build an efficient engine for yourself to kind of convert those resources into the things that you need right now, whether it be for food or to sell off for points and things like that.
Yeah.
There's not any one part that's too complicated. And anything that is, has a little more stitch to it or whatever, it's all listed out right there on the card to take you through it. So there's not a lot of like memorizing little rules.
No.
You just got to make sure you remember that. It's like, it's just right there on the card. Yeah. Do what it says, which I miss. I miss that in games. I feel like we don't have that as much these days. And it's like, man, there's something beautiful about that.
Yeah,
like, it's just right there. It tells you how it works.
Yeah, totally. So that's our number one, Le Havre. Again, there's a lot.
Don't add us, okay? I know it's a big game. Don't add us now.
I think it's fine. I think it makes sense. Down in the comments, let us know where you disagree with us. At Mike, who cares, There
you go. I'm sensitive, man.
And let us know what other games you think fall into this category of games that you think have, and again, they don't have to be the simplest games ever. Yeah. Like in Concordia, Le Havre, these are not necessarily simple games, but in terms of the rules to the strategy, where's that gap really big? Where are you thinking? Let us know down in the comments below, because I think it's a thing that a lot of games, not every single game, not every game needs to be simple rules, but I think it's a great thing to strive for in game design.
Yeah.
Right?
Make it as simple and easy to understand as possible for the experience you want to give. So is Le Havre's teach the same length as Arboretum's teach? No. It's going to be longer, but it's also a bigger, more complicated game. So try to keep it as smooth and simple as you can for the game you got.
I tell you, we're going to get crap, Mikey. No Reiner Knizia on this list.
No Reiner Knizia. Okay, listen.
Reiner Knizia could be on this list. I think we're fine.
Lost Cities. There you go.
Nonetheless, that's going to be it for us. Make sure to check out our Patreon. A lot of times we'll do a supplemental list over on Patreon. We don't have one for this one. We do some behind-the-scenes stuff, some first reactions to games. So make sure to check out our Patreon. Patrons have been scrolling by here. If you're interested, we would really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And if every time you pick up a game because we suggested you thought it looked cool because we did a playthrough, make sure to let the publisher know, because that's a great way to support us, honestly, because they go, really those crazy Murphs always talking about our Le Havre.
Boom, you know how we do.
And then Lookout Spiel's like, you want half our business? We're like, yes, Lookout Spiel, thank you.
51%. The controlling stake in the company will run it into the ground because we don't know how to run a board game company.
Truth, absolutely.
Oh, well.
That's going to be it for us. My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We're the Brothers Murph. We'll see you later, everybody.
Bye.